Hey friends, welcome back to the Profitable Writer Podcast. If you're new here, my name is Kent Sanders. I'm an author and ghostwriter, and this is the show that helps you grow your impact and income as a writer. I was born in 1974, and you've probably heard me talk about my love of 80s music here on the show before. And why not? I mean, the 80s, in my humble opinion, was simply the greatest decade in American culture as far as the amount and quality of amazing music that was created. And that's why I'm really excited today to bring you this exceptionally fun and inspiring conversation with Jim Daneker. Jim is an award-winning and Billboard-charting composer and producer who specializes in the bold, evocative, and memorable. In addition to 27 years as keyboardist, musical director, and producer for CCM icon Michael W. Smith, Jim has enjoyed a really diverse musical career. He has produced albums, created a virtual instrument series called Backstage Pass, and arranged and written music for film. His film music work includes trailers for Hollywood blockbusters such as the Fast and the Furious franchise, Transformers 2, the Chronicles of Narnia, and several Disney projects. After 2 decades of serving other artists, Jim took 2 years to pursue his dream of scoring a cinematic instrumental album called AD ALTA, which released in 2017. In 2018, Jim produced another Billboard #1 album, this time for quadruple #1 artist Paul Cardall, an album that had the unprecedented distinction of debuting on 9 charts simultaneously and also won a Dove Award for Instrumental Album of the Year. In February 2023, Jim announced his retirement from touring and the launch of a lifetime dream project called Orchestra, which reimagines the biggest hits of the 80s in an epic live show. So today in this conversation, we dive into all things Arcade Orchestra and the 80s. He shares his vision for AO, why the 80s were such an incredible decade for music and movies, what it was like to transition away from a steady music gig into building his own thing, and much more. In addition to being a very fun conversation about all things 80s, I think this conversation is especially going to inspire you if you've been focusing exclusively on client work and you've been dreaming of putting yourself out there in the spotlight a little bit more. Now, I should note that Jim was very kind in opening up his home near Nashville to me for this in-person interview, and I got to say it was really, really fun getting to see his studio set up and all the cool gear that he had there in that space. It was really, really fun. So, Jim, thank you for your hospitality and kindness. To find out more about Jim and Arcade Orchestra, make sure to visit jimdaneker.com and arcadeorchestra.com. And with that, here's my conversation with Jim Daneker. Let's start with your story. So I know that you played keys for Michael W. Smith, known as Smitty, of course. I don't know him personally. Never had the opportunity to meet him personally. Maybe I will one day. But I know that everybody calls him Smitty.
Yep.
So you played keys for Smitty for a really long time. How did you, which seems like a really cool gig, from my perspective as a Christian music fan from the time I was a little kid, The Big Picture was a hugely important album in my life, as it was so many people's.
Me too. Yeah.
But how do you go from, being a kid who's dreaming about being involved in music? How do you go from that place to then getting involved in music? Obviously, I got a lot of questions about AO and all the dreams and visions of all that stuff. Yeah. But I'd love to hear your story of how did you actually get into this industry to begin with?
Well, it's funny because if I had $1 for every time a young kid asks that question, like, how do I get into this? Everybody who's gotten into it just scratches their heads. It's the hardest question to answer because there's no formula. There's no, there's no clear path. It's different for everybody. For me, I grew up, the only person in my family who was really musical. And the really short and almost cop-out answer, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I just believe in my case, God had a call on my life, and for whatever reason, plucked me out of Obscureville, Pennsylvania, and put a dream in me, and that's one answer. But the longer one is that I grew up, it was interesting the way I grew up because, again, I was the only person who was musical, really. Now, everybody loved music in my family, but in terms of what was on the record player back then, it was whatever my mom was listening to while she was cleaning the house, which was Kenny Rogers or Anne Murray.
I love Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, hooked on classics. Just some bizarre combination of stuff. So I kind of had to take it on myself to expose myself to other music. But as a kid, how do you do that? So in the late 70s, early 80s, when I was able to start buying my own albums, I was so exposed to film, for one thing. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a huge part of my creative development. Star Wars, Indiana Jones,
Absolutely.
E.T., all of that stuff. And so, and flash forward, that informs even how I think musically. Everything I do, I feel like there's this cinematic bent to it. But anyway, my musical diet was mostly John Williams, film music in the early 80s, but then 80s pop radio. And then because I grew up in the church, my dad was a pastor, there was also the burgeoning CCM industry, which was basically just Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith at the time. A few others, Stephen Curtis Chapman later on in the 80s. But the only two I ever really listened to that really caught my ear were Amy and Smitty. And so by 1985, Smitty is what really got my attention. And I think there was just something about his music that just drew me in. For one, he's a phenomenally gifted pop songwriter. Mm-hmm. He knows how to craft a melody like nobody I've ever been around. I mean, there's ideas on his hard drives that people will never hear that are mind-blowing. And so I think between that and the fact that I was always captivated by music technology, synthesizers and all that kind of stuff, that's what hooked me into his stuff. So I think, it was 85. He did his Friends tour, which was really his first headline.
With the whole jacket?
Yeah, the leopard's color. It was almost the Joseph Technicolor
exactly.
green coat type thing. I wore that thing out. We had a Bible bookstore in our area where you could rent videos. And so I didn't even own the video. We would just rent it all the time. And then, of course, I made a copy so that I could watch it. That was my education as a kid.
It was a good education.
It was a great education. And so by 1986, probably, I started just dreaming of the idea that someday that's what I want to do. I couldn't think of anything else. Now, we've talked about, not you and I, but people always talk about how kids, you go to your guidance counselor in high school and then, well, do you know what you want to do? So many kids have no idea, even when they graduate high school.
Right.
So I think for me, it was a bit rare maybe that I knew by 8th grade, I'm going to Nashville, Tennessee, because I used to also read CCM magazine cover to cover. And
every month you pour over it.
Yeah. So it was that and Keyboard magazine that was my printed education. So between the two, I already knew that I'm going to have to move to Nashville. And so I remember telling my family, yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move to Nashville someday. I'm going to work with Michael W. Smith. And the answer was always a polite chuckle. Well, God bless you. That's a good idea, and it's fun to dream, but you need to have a backup plan. So I didn't give myself a backup plan. I went through, let's see, 85, 86, I would have been 13-ish. And
you were born in 73, right?
73.
Okay, I'm 74, so we were really close.
Yeah, so I punched the card, through school. I hated school. I didn't want to go to college because I felt like that was just going to delay me by 4 years.
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted to do. And no $30,000 piece of paper is going to get you a job in the music industry.
And now far more than that.
Yes, right. Yeah, it's more like $30,000 a semester. So, all this to say, long answer to your question, I didn't have a plan B. I didn't give myself a plan B. I moved to Nashville at 22 years old in 1995. And I just had this stubborn persistence. And 6 months later, I got the call from Michael's camp because this thing called Pro Tools had come out. Nobody knew what it was back then. And I was this kind of whiz kid with music technology. I was obsessed with keyboards and synthesizers and drum machines and all the things that went into that. And so the the idea basically was there was a company that was based in LA that did all of the technology for these big tours. They had just gone out of business right as Pro Tools was coming out, luckily for me. And so word had started spreading in Nashville that that I was this technology kid, and they needed somebody for Michael's tour to replace this company that, who do we get to run this tour that knows this new Pro Tools thing? So they found me. I had been sending resumes, demo cassettes and stuff with my little bit of performance background that I had, traveling around playing, church events and youth group things and stuff like that. But I think between the demo that I sent, which was a bunch of synthesizer programming and a lot of it was based on Michael's music, I think they saw promise in me, and they rolled the dice on me and trusted me with this huge responsibility. So that's the short version of my story, but there really is there's no formula. I think in some way you have to have a sense that you know what you're good at, you know what you're not good at. You got to be honest with yourself, because a lot of people have big dreams and they want to be a fill in the blank. They want to be an artist or whatever. I thought I wanted to be an artist for a long time. In terms of, I wanted to be the next Michael when he was done. That was kind of my goal as a 22-year-old. Well, it took all of a year traveling with him to realize I don't want Michael's job. He's getting tugged on all day long, and there are parts of it that are ideal to me, but anyway, introspection, healthy sense of what your gifts are, and assuming you have, something that is a marketable skill, then you start rolling the dice and you put yourself in an environment where you can be noticed, where you can also be a team player and you provide a valuable skill that solves people's problems. I mean, that's, life,
huge.
Life 101.
That's business 101.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. And right up there with all those things is the ability to hang, to be in essentially social situations, because there were people that I've worked with over the years that were monster players. There's one guy I can think of in particular who he worked with one of the artists I've worked with. I'm not going to name names,
obviously,
but it didn't last very long, because one of the best players I ever heard on his particular instrument, but he was basically like a college frat boy, just no personality and hard to get along with. I'm like, well, that doesn't work. You're cooped up in a rolling submarine for weeks at a time with, 8, 9 other people. You got to be able to be fun to be around. That's a huge component.
Let me take a little 60-second jaunt. I'm curious about something that you mentioned. You said somebody at Smitty's level. Just for people who aren't familiar kind of with the world of being an artist who's been around for decades, very well known, touring all over the place, record deals, particularly probably in the 90s, sort of like the pop, when he was really doing a lot more pop stuff, involved in interviews, media, those kind of things. What is life like for that person? Because I think a lot of people dream of, I want to be that person who's always in the spotlight. I want to have the big career. I want to have this or that. Yeah. What is life actually like for that person? And what kind of made you decide maybe at some point, like, I'm not sure if I would really want that role? I'm just kind of curious if you can describe what their life is actually like on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I came on board when Michael was just kind of coming off of his mainstream pop heyday.
So like the late 90s?
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s? Okay.
Yeah. 1991 was probably the peak of that for him. Not 91, 92. Well, that would have been 92, 93 even. When Place in This World, that was the first big one. Yeah. And then I Will Be Here for You and a few others. So I was around him just enough to see that you're just constantly being tugged on and pulled on. You're having to approve things all day long. Hey, what do you we need you to approve this photo or this thing. Interviews, doing press all the time. Trying to think what else. I mean, the fame aspect. Now, of course, and Michael he was, how do I say this without sounding I'm not sure what the right word is. Michael wasn't super famous, but he was at least recognizable enough to where, at least certainly around his events, like if we were playing in a certain town, it was hard for him to go out because you can't have a moment's peace. He goes to go to the mall during the day or whatever, and you want to sit down and have a meal and just hang with your friends. Somebody comes up and interrupts your meal, and the public generally has zero. People just don't think like, hey, maybe I shouldn't bother this guy. He's just trying to have a nice meal. They just come right up to you in the middle of you're having a deep conversation with somebody, and hey, can I have your autograph? And it's, you get it. I mean, and those are the people that are paying your bills.
Yeah.
So you want to be kind. And Michael has always been incredibly gracious and kind. But I think about people that really in the mainstream who literally can't go out of their houses. I just can't imagine that, because for me, I'm wired to. I'm a really social person, I think, but that would drive me crazy. Just the lack of ability to just be normal.
I saw an interview with Ben Affleck. He was on the Theo Von podcast. Is that his name? I think.
Yes.
Does a lot of celebrities and stuff. And this has been just 2-3 weeks ago. He was talking about how everybody wants to be rich and famous.
Yeah.
And, here you have Ben Affleck, one of the world's most recognizable movie stars.
Yeah.
He's been a star since the 90s, so a long time. And he said, I would never wish this, and I'm paraphrasing, I would never really wish this on anybody. Of course, he's been through a lot, a couple of divorces, lots of sort of personal chaos and crises, that kind of stuff. He said, rich is fine, but famous, be careful what you wish for.
I saw that clip. Yeah, absolutely.
It's really telling.
Jim Carrey said something very similar years ago in an interview. He was talking about how, of course, I can't remember, again, paraphrasing like you said, but I've heard that over and over again. People have said, just really, it doesn't solve any problems. I mean, it solves a few. I mean, Sammy Hagar, one of my favorites along those lines, I stumbled on an interview of Sammy Hagar, lead singer of Van Halen, second lead singer of Van Halen, with Dan Rather. This is about a year or two ago. And it's an hour and 10 minutes long, I think. And I got sucked in because his personality, for one, just there was something about it. But he's a really interesting guy.
He's a super interesting guy.
By the end of that interview, he had me in tears.
Wow.
Because they're wrapping it up, and Dan said, okay, you've experienced everything that most red-blooded males would ever care to experience, starting with fame and fortune. And he said, if you had to choose just one, would you rather be rich or famous? And Sammy said, well, having experienced both in abundance, I can tell you this, rich all day long. Because fame, that the 2 hours a day that it's fun doesn't outweigh the other 22 hours of the day where it comes with serious side effects. And he kind of talked about the fact that we're not made to be worshipped.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the thing that got me really in the heart was when he started talking about what he's been able to do with his wealth. And he wasn't talking about it in a bragging sort of way, but he was talking about being able to pay for kidney transplants for kids in third world countries.
It's amazing.
I mean, and Dan said, a lot of celebrities give lip service to that, but I've done my digging, and you really do what you're claiming you do. And Sammy started to tear up. I mean, and it was so powerful. I wish more people could see that, because it's really telling. And I've seen just enough of it. I've been around a lot of celebrities in my career, and I've always said, people like Michael and Amy Grant, Stephen Curtis Chapman, I believe they are where they are because they've stewarded that stuff really well. They're grounded. They've surrounded themselves with people who keep them grounded and accountable. And their nature is to not heap that on themselves and oh, give me more. Most celebrities, they're a mess. We're all a mess,
We're all a mess. And then when you have scads of wealth and fame, and you have all these people at your disposal. Probably it amplifies the best and the worst characteristics of somebody.
It's one of the ultimate magnifying glasses. You know, it shines a gigantic spotlight on who you really are. And so, yeah, it's to be careful what you wish for. It really is.
Wow.
The ideal phrase. I mean, but again, I've had great examples of that. You know, I can't say enough good stuff about Michael and Amy in particular.
Why do you think that? And I think I asked you maybe a question similar to this when we were at a social event not too long ago. Mm-hmm. Something I'd been really curious about for a long time, which is if you take and I followed Michael and Amy's and Stephen Curtis's career, mm-hmm. you know, since the 80s. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's how I learned to actually play guitar. Was Stephen Curtis had back when Sparrow Records did those front row videos.
Yeah.
Like Michael Card had one and Margaret Becker had one and he had one. And one summer I practically wore that VHS tape out. I would pause it. I'm like, what is that chord? What is that chord change he's doing there? That's how I learned to finger pick, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it that you think so many people, not just in Christian music, but in general, so many people have come and gone. They have these short bursts of career, maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years, maybe mm-hmm. 15 years. All three of those folks have been going since the 80s. Amy since really the 70s, I suppose.
Yeah.
What is it about? Is it something with persistence? Is it something with talent? Is it something with character? Is there a drive that has to be within somebody internally that keeps you going and having a relevant career literally for decades? What is it about those people that maybe others don't have that has kept them going for so long?
First answer is it's all of the above. Because there are some people that have heaps of talent and they fizzle out.
Yeah.
One of my first thoughts is they were in the right place at the right time when the music industry was a vastly different place than it is today. Today, there's 80,000 songs a day uploaded.
Yeah. Most of them on YouTube.
How do you weed through that? But they were discovered at a time that was ideal for people who were super talented like that. So that's the foundation. Again, assuming you have the talent and the gifts to write songs. This is another main thing. They're fantastic writers. They've written songs that musically, and that's probably what draws my ear the most, because I think first and foremost, I'm a musician. As wordy as I am, and as much as like, if I had gone through college, I would have been an English major, because I pride myself on being able to, craft words, but lyrics are not my thing. Music is what gets my attention. And they've all crafted songs that are timeless, and not just because of the music, but, lyrically too. They've said things that become a mouthpiece for the common man. And that's important. And then being able to stay grounded, like all three of those people, Smitty, Amy, and Stephen Curtis, they've been able to keep their particular careers going because of who they are and who they've surrounded themselves with. So it's all those ingredients: incredible talent, being in the right place at the right time, surrounding yourselves with people who keep you grounded, and constantly chasing excellence. When you look at their discographies, I mean, it's such a broad, in most cases, like Smitty's, his is all over the map. I mean,
it's lots of genres.
There's the 80s pop stuff, and even within that, the Big Picture record came out, and I talked about in his interview, it gave everybody whiplash, because the first two records were
so
kind
different.
of, a little bit Toto, Michael McDonald, a little bit more organic, still a lot of synthesizers and even a little bit of drum machines. But then the Big Picture came out, and it was like, what is this? It was everything about the 80s on overload.
And the very first thing, you play it and you're like, is there an airplane flying over?
Yeah.
The intro to Lama is like
the THX.
Like, what in the world is going on here?
Yeah. And then the record after that was another 180-degree shift. The Eye to Eye record was completely organic. And it's like there were no drum machines, and it just was. And then in the early 2000s, the whole worship thing, which redefined his career. Amy, same thing. You know, she had her earlier stuff was really organic, almost. You could tell she listened to a lot of James Taylor and
Right.
you know all that kind of thing. And then she rode the pop wave in the mid 80s. And then again, same as Smitty, Lead Me On record, 180-degree shift. I couldn't speak to Stephen Curtis's as much because I didn't listen to his as much. But, you know, they've had their careers, I think at the end of the day, because of who they are, their talent, certainly, but their heart, their character, the choices they've made, the choices they haven't made. They've just been really wise, and they've stewarded their gifts really well. And it was a time that allowed for that kind of thing. Today, I don't think we're going to have artists who we're going to be celebrating 30 years from now. And that's not, you know, that sounds like I'm being the old cranky guy on the front porch, you know, kids get off my lawn.
We are Gen Xers.
We are.
It kind of comes with the territory.
It does, but I can honestly say that's not where that's coming from. I just think there's certainly talented people today. It's not that. But the machine, the music industry machine is radically different than it was 40 years ago. Back then, labels invested in their labels invested in their artists for the long term.
Right.
You know, today, if you don't sell 100 million records, they drop you. And so it was just the perfect storm to allow for those long careers, assuming you had the other ingredients in place. We just want to give a quick shout out to our friends at ADK Microphones. I've used all kinds of mics throughout my career, and I can honestly say I've finally stopped searching for that holy grail studio microphone. I've been using their custom shop Z-Mod series to record some world-class guest artists for Arcade Orchestra, and their TFET series is top-notch as well and super affordable. So be sure to check out ADK Mics at adkmic.com.
Now, I do want to dive into all things 80s.
Yep.
And I see you've got a Back to the Future
Yep.
DeLorean model. I actually have that exact same one, except it's not from... Is that from number 2?
Future that's 2? Got the Mr. Fusion on the back, I think. So, or no, that doesn't. That's the original one.
Okay, that's the original. I think I've got number 2 at home.
I didn't know they made another. I didn't even know they made the.
Yeah, they make them for 1, 2, and 3.
Oh wow! Okay.
There's like some interchangeable parts.
Yeah, fun.
Only
awesome.
A true nerd like me would know that.
Yeah.
So I want to get to all things 80s and some other questions. So while we're on the topic of careers and longevity, I'm curious if you can talk a bit about you're in Smitty's world for a long time. What was it that gave you that initial spark of an idea for Arcade Orchestra? And then can you walk us through your decision process, however much or how little you want to share about that, to go out on your own? Because that's a huge decision. I've faced similar things in my own life. I was a college professor for a long time. Don't hold that against me. It's just as exciting as it sounds.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. And then made the decision a number of years ago to go into ghostwriting.
Yeah.
And now I run a membership community for writers and write my own stuff as well. So there's kind of a variety of things there. But I'm curious, I guess this is really a two-part thing. What led you to want to build Arcade Orchestra? What was the seed of that idea? And then what was the process like of actually deciding, okay, this is more than just the spark of an idea.
Yeah.
I've got to actually build something around this. And I've got to make what I'm sure was a scary and long-term, it took you all to work through this decision to step out of somebody else's world and kind of do my own thing.
Yeah. Well, there were a few catalysts that sparked it, but the long tail version is that I could never shake the 80s.
That's a great quote.
I've never stopped loving that decade. And I don't know if it goes beyond mere nostalgia, and I think this is the universal aspect of it that any 80s kid can relate to. Who doesn't love that era?
My son knows all those songs. He's 21.
Yeah. So we'll get to that.
Isn't that crazy?
But yeah, it was such an optimistic time. I mean, we had this sense, Stranger Things, I think, did a good job of capturing some of this from those kids' perspective, and of course without the horror and the all the weird stuff. But my memories of it are like all the memes that you see.
Yeah.
We disappeared on our bikes for the entire day. Our parents didn't know where we were. We couldn't be reached.
Where's your kid? We don't know.
Yeah. We were out playing in the woods, you know, and without a care in the world on our BMX bikes, scraping our knees, you know, it's all of those memes are 100% true.
They are. They really
and
are.
I have fond memories of hanging at my cousin's house. They had an above ground pool and just horsing around, being kids in the 80s, laying on a raft while there's a boombox over there playing Casey Kasem's Top 40, and you're hearing Phil Collins, Mr. Tears for Fears, Duran Duran, Peter Gabriel, on and on. It was the best of times. And so carrying that all through my adult life, I've always kind of had this one eye on someday that stuff's going to come back around. And I've always been at some level looking for an opportunity to how can I do something with those songs?
Interesting.
So back in 2014, I believe it was, 2014, 2015, I started, I went through a really rough stretch of life. I went through a divorce, and I mean, it was years of hell on earth.
I can imagine.
And all of a sudden I found myself in a new relationship and remarried, and life all of a sudden, it was like a 180-degree turn. Got very, very healthy, and I felt like myself again. I felt like I was coming back alive. And I always wanted to do a big cinematic instrumental album, kind of to honor that other side of me, musically, the John Williams side of me. So I started seeing people doing these Kickstarter campaigns. Kickstarter, you know, crowdfunding had become a thing. And I thought, all right, I was faced with a decision to do a Kickstarter campaign to fund doing some kind of album. It was my biggest dream as an artist to do some kind of album. I felt like I had a lot to say creatively. But then it came down to, well, I either want to do some kind of retro 80s album, or I want to do this big cinematic film score album, or I want to do a combination of the two. So I went through kind of a decision process then. I did some demos of some 80s songs. One of them was In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins, probably my favorite 80s song. And I came really close to going that direction. And I just felt like, I just don't think it's time for this right now. So I put it on the shelf, and I ended up doing this big cinematic album called AD ALTA. I spent a year and a half doing it. Stepped away from everything other than tour dates with Michael and did this Kickstarter. So I did that album, and of course, hindsight's 2020. You always look back, and I realized that was the right thing for the right time. That opened a lot of doors for me. It got me some other, you know, work along those lines, but the 80s thing was still in the back of my mind. And so around, I don't know when it was, 2016, 17 maybe, my daughter, who at the time would have been mid-teens, started getting me into Stranger Things. And that's the genre-wise, that's not my kind of thing. But there was no denying.
Sucks you in though for
I mean,
kids.
as an 80s, as a Gen Xer, I'm like, oh my gosh, they nailed the 80s aesthetic and everything. But the big thing, I was sitting there, and my wife Anita, we were sitting there watching it. The music that they were using,
especially the intro.
Oh my gosh!
Did you ever see the documentary of how they actually made?
Yeah.
Isn't that you're like,
yeah?
Oh my gosh, this is fascinating.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was around 2015. In fact, I think that's when that show came out. And so between the music and specifically some of the teasers that I was seeing, there was a teaser for a documentary about Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's effects company.
Yeah.
And they used a Journey song, but they added these huge cinematic elements. It's like if Hans Zimmer had scored a Journey song.
Lots of drums.
I think I broke my wife's ribs elbowing her like, see, someone's going to do this. So for my entire adult life, I had this idea of marrying 80s songs with that big cinematic film score side of my brain.
I had never made that connection.
Yep. And so as soon as I heard that, my wheels started turning. I started thinking, okay, it's time. The 80s thing is coming back, then Cobra Kai, Stranger Things, then the new Top Gun movie in 2022, I think it was.
Phenomenal movie.
That movie, number one, it saved the movie business after COVID. Credit to Tom Cruise. He stuck to his guns, no pun intended. Paramount, they wanted to put that movie out on streaming, and he said, absolutely not. Thank God he had the power to say no.
Yeah.
He said, this deserves to be seen as we intended movies to be.
He was right.
He was absolutely right. So I took my daughter to see it, as she'd become a big 80s fan from watching Stranger Things. And so we showed her the first Top Gun movie. So you got to see the first one. And then I took her on a daddy-daughter date to watch the new one. Kent, all the way home from the theater, 30 minutes. She just, you grew up in the best decade. It's not fair. You had the best.
Not fair.
You had the best of music, the clothes, the pop culture, everything. So I'm sitting here listening to my 18-year-old daughter at the time. Tell me how great. Tell me she envied me. Now, how many times in history have we ever heard kids say they envied their parents? Zero.
It's pretty rare.
It's never happened, at least not like this. So then I started doing some research and hearing all of my daughter's friends and my peers who had kids my daughter's age. Every one of them, the more I talked to people, they were all saying the same thing. Our kids love the 80s.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, okay, that was the main catalyst, really, was my daughter, showing me how big the 80s are to her generation. So I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to do with the second half of my life. I want to build this massive show, ideally with a bunch of original 80s artists, mingling with some contemporary artists, but not just redo the 80s stuff. And you got to be careful with that, because nobody wants the 80s to be messed with. It's practically sacred.
It's like the idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's this sacred thing. Don't mess with it.
And I agree. Early on, I used to use the tagline, the 80s reimagined. But Byron, our mutual friend, he's like, I don't know if that's smart, because you don't want people getting the idea that you're going to mess with these songs.
Right.
And I'm like, you are so right.
Good point.
Because that's I'm always trying to communicate that. Please know, we're not going to mess with these sacred songs. Everything that you know and love about those songs, you're going to hear. But we're adding these big cinematic elements and just taking it up another notch. And I think there's a way to do that that's respectful of the material. But anyway, all this to say, those were the catalysts. And from a marketing perspective, what I keep telling people is you got to know that we're getting at least two audiences for the price of one. Not just those of us who lived through it and miss it and would love to go back. We're getting a whole other generation.
That's right.
Who practically idolizes this stuff. That's unique in history. We've never had anything like that before. So it's just a unique time. And I was worried for a while that we got to get this thing out, because I was seeing it as a fad and it's going to go away. Well, it just keeps getting stronger. Yeah. So I think as long as our generation is alive, I think we're good for a while. The clock is still ticking. I'm anxious to get it going. But so that's the first part of your question. The other part, how to make the decision to leave a stable, a really good gig.
Yeah, and could you have stayed in Smitty's circle indefinitely if that's what you had wanted?
Well,
is that sort of how that works musically, artistically?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I could have stayed, but on the other hand, if I'm really going to do this, you got to jump in with both feet.
Yeah.
When I did my AD ALTA record, like I said, I shut down. I stopped answering my phone for a year and a half. That's why I did the Kickstarters, to, supplement my income to where I could go and hire an orchestra and do the stuff that needed to be done. But
super well done, by the way.
Thanks.
I actually listened to that record, little side note, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh.
So I actually saw you when you and Smitty and Mac Powell and Stephen Curtis were on the drive-in theater tour.
Yes, during COVID.
So you came to, you probably don't remember this, maybe you do, this little town in southern Missouri. It's Cadet, Missouri. Of course, you went to a lot of small towns.
Yes,
that
right.
tour. And my hometown is Potosi, Missouri, which is like 10 miles away from there. So you guys were there. First of all, I looked around, I'm like, I cannot believe they're actually doing this.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And, I'm one of those people who always read the liner notes of CDs, tapes, cassettes back in the day.
Right.
And so I've always paid attention to who was playing in the band.
Right.
I remember he, said Jim Daneker on the keys. And I was like, who is that guy? I'm just kind of curious. I'm always curious about people in bands that I listen to. And so I looked you up and actually listened to that record. And my first impression was, why isn't this guy like scoring Hollywood movies? Like this is so good and so legit. A lot of people try to do stuff, but I'm not a pro musician. Used to be a worship pastor back in the day, so I'm a guitar player and drummer. But I do know enough to understand that scoring for film seems to me to be an infinitely more complicated kind of things, because you're not just talking about drums and keys and guitar.
Right.
You're talking about orchestral arrangements and everything.
Yeah.
So is that a correct assessment that is really a much higher level of complication than kind of a pop record? Maybe that's not fair.
It is. Well, no, it's fair. I mean, that's absolutely true. And the other thing that really complicates it, when you're scoring a film, you are a slave to the director's vision.
Right.
And in fact, that's another thing I thought for a slice of my career. I thought, I want to score films, because that was a huge part of my language as a musician. Is I grew up on a steady diet of John Williams, James Horner, James Newton Howard, Hans Zimmer, all those guys. And I did enough of that to realize I don't want to do that, because scoring films, you have no life while you're doing it. There's an interview with James Newton Howard that's brilliant. It's a small slice of what that life looks like at their level. And like in his case, he talks about starting to write at 9 a.m, working during the peak, 18 hours, sleeping for a few hours while the copyist gets all the notation printed out, put it on the stands, and 24 hours later you're recording, and rinse and repeat for 6 weeks straight, if not longer. So number one, you don't sleep, for weeks at a time. I need my sleep.
I remember seeing an interview with Hans Zimmer. This has been 2-3 months ago. I followed his stuff for a long time. Love the guy. And I remember him. I don't remember what movie he was referring to. It might have been Gladiator. Mm-hmm. I don't remember. But he was talking about how he was just sitting there in a studio and he had nothing. Yeah. And the director, I think it was the original Gladiator. Yes. And Ridley Scott kept like pressing him like, okay, we have to do something. Yeah. And he's like, I got nothing. And there was, I forget what the catalyst was. That was the creative spark. Yeah. That sounds like a lot of stress.
No, that's a great interview. And it is about the original Gladiator. And he talks about that every film he scores, that first blank page.
It sounds terrifying.
All musicians are the same. We end up procrastinating, and it's a terrifying thing, that blank page. But inevitably, you just keep working at it, and all of a sudden it'll, some idea will spark. And that to me, that's Hans's pinnacle to me, is Gladiator. That score.
It's haunting. I don't know another word to describe it.
It's the melodies. It's so, that's one score. You put it on, I will tear up inevitably. And I've heard it a million times, but that's the power of a great melody. Yeah. But so back to your question about, leaving a gig like that. I asked the same question when I interviewed Mick McNeil from Simple Minds a couple weeks ago. One of the most iconic bands of the 80s. And he left at their peak. And so I knew, before I even asked him, I knew what his answer was. Plus I had read his story. But it's hard for people to understand from the outside in. Why would you leave something like that? Well, in my case, and I adore Smitty. He's one of my best friends. He's been like gold to me, and he's loved my family really well. It was a hard decision.
I can imagine.
And I spent the summer of 2022 talking to my closest friends, my wife, of course, getting her permission. Like, are you okay if I take this risk? Because it's going to, I mean, we could end up in a van down by the river.
It's a financial risk giving up something that you've done for a long time.
Yeah. It's a risk in every way. I mean, you step away from, I mean, out of sight, out of mind. You step away from something that's public like that, people start forgetting about you. And there were no guarantees. So it was as crazy as it gets. And, but at the same time, I knew that I'm sitting on a great idea. And I just believed that, okay, I've built a pretty solid network of relationships over 3 decades. I should be able to parlay that into something. I just believe, and this gets into my faith, I think, but I believe God's called me to it. I believe he gave me the idea. And I think where God calls you, he equips you. Doesn't mean it's going to be comfortable. And it's not been comfortable. It's been terrifying, if I'm being honest. We're in a stretch right now where I haven't had a paycheck in over a year. And we have risked everything. We've been living on home equity. Thank goodness for that. But that runs out at a certain point, and it's there are no guarantees. All I have is the idea and the belief that if I surround myself with talented people, with people who are skilled in their areas, people like Byron and John, our marketing guy, and we all pull our weight, and we get ourselves in front of the right venues and the right investors, I believe it's going to happen. And I've seen enough green lights. I spent that summer 2022 just kind of putting some feelers out and testing the idea, and everybody I've talked to about it. And I've created all these concept videos, most of which are not public. I can't wait to show them to people publicly. But when I show those videos to people and it walks through the whole concept, everybody says, yeah, this is going to be a game changer. It's going to change live entertainment. And we had these meetings in Las Vegas last summer. Byron and I went out for a bunch of meetings. Halfway through every meeting, everybody would lean back in their chairs and say, this is going to revolutionize what we do in Las Vegas. And that's where we're hoping to debut. So when you hear things like that, it helps keep you going, even though the odds are not in our favor in some ways, at least statistically. But I know that they are. I know that it's going to work out. I've seen enough to know that, it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of plugging away and being persistent. But it was leaving a 27-year career with Michael was, it was both hard and it wasn't, because I knew.
Because is there a difference between, I think whenever people are considering a transition, there's a difference between leaving something versus going towards something.
Right.
So was there a sense in which the call for you was so strong, that creative pull, and even I'm sure for you there's a spiritual component since you're a person of faith. Was that pull so strong that was kind of like, yeah, this is sort of a no-brainer, even though it's scary, we're not sure how the details are going to work out.
Right.
Is that how you experienced that transition?
Yeah. Again, partially because, reading the tea leaves, and it's just eyes open to what's going on in the world and how this 80s nostalgia is such a big thing right now. And realizing so many people would give their left arm to go back and experience this stuff again.
Especially at the Sphere.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? This is so ready-made for the Sphere.
Well, and funny you say that. I thought so too. And I've gone back and forth on it. When I first discovered the Sphere, U2 opened that. And before I saw their show, and I didn't see their show there, but I saw enough people posting their videos from it.
You practically are seeing the show.
Yeah. I thought that could be perfect. But then I saw everybody's videos and I thought, maybe not, because it's all about that visual experience. That screen is 360 feet tall. You could put the Statue of Liberty inside there.
It's pretty big.
But here's the problem. The band is almost an afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, there's a band down there. And it looks like a flea circus compared to that screen. So we went out there to Vegas back in August, and halfway through the first meeting, It was with a guy who had been at the Sphere. He worked there. And I think he was like head of marketing or something. But now he was at another venue, and he stopped us cold. He said, "You need to march this down the street to the Sphere and show it to them. This needs to be at the Sphere." So all week long, everybody kept telling us that. So that Friday, we ended up at the Sphere. They gave us a private tour. We're talking to them and telling them our ideas. And they're like, yeah, this sounds amazing. Their atrium looks like an 80s mall already. You know, we want to build kind of an 80s mall experience for, you know, on the way in.
Are you going to have the Michael Jackson jacket with the zippers?
Oh, my gosh. I mean,
you got to have one of those.
Everything. Members only wants to be part of, you know, our thing. Pizza Hut, Orange Julius, Sony, remake the Walkman. We want you to feel like you're at an 80s mall. But anyway, so we walked out of the Sphere thinking, yeah, this, I mean, we're a kid in a candy store. It felt like this could be a monumental thing. But they passed on us a couple weeks later, which was a bit of a blow. But at the same time, they told us we've also passed on Hans Zimmer and his show. There are a lot of reasons for it. And so
sure.
I was bummed at first, but the more I thought about it, I look back and I realized it's not the right venue. This really needs to be in a conventional venue where you're seeing an actual show and it's in front of you, not down here on a postage size stamp where, you know, I was talking to Vince Gill at Amy.
I saw an interview with him where he was, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm curious. So
I was at Amy and Vince's house doing her interview for our podcast, and Vince is walking around in his bare feet, and I said, hey, so tell me, not off the record, but you're not in front of a camera. Give me your honest thoughts about playing at the Sphere. And he goes, nobody cares that we're there. You know, he's typical Vince. He said, I might as well not be there. He said, you know, it's weird from a technology standpoint. It's hard to hear yourself. And the Eagles, they're not used to playing with in-ear monitors. So that was an adjustment for them.
Interesting. Even though it's 2025?
Oh, yeah. They're used to wedges. There's a very, very old school.
I didn't know anybody has used wedges in the last 20 years.
But they can't do that there. And he said, yeah, it's frustrating because people aren't looking at you. They're not there. They're sitting there like this the whole time. And if you watch I don't know how you'd find it, but the very first video of the Eagles debuting there, oh my gosh, Glenn Fry, lead singer. Where's my brain today?
Don Henley?
Don Henley. First thing he said, they finished the first song, and he kind of looks around, and he typical cranky Don Henley, he's like, well, welcome to whatever the bleep this is.
That sounds like Don Henley.
And I'm thinking, oh man, the people at the Sphere are probably not really happy right now. But it's true. It's just not the ideal venue for the kind of show that we want to do.
Interesting.
So,
I wouldn't have guessed that. I'm glad I asked about that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe someday down the road, I could build a version of it that would work there, but it's too important to me to, you know, this needs to be a show that you're actually immersed in the show itself, not the 300-foot visuals. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was blown away when we walked in there. The stuff you can do is mind-blowing. But I just felt like it's not the right place for us.
So I do want to dive in. I'm not sure how long you want to go.
Oh, we're fine.
I could talk to you all day about this stuff. So I want to dive into some 80s stuff. But before I do that, I do want to, I was going to say pull on a little thread. That's not really what I mean. I want to explore a question that I'm sure you have thought about and maybe people have asked you about as well. So you are transitioning. You have transitioned away from a musical circle that's very faith-based. Mm-hmm. So Smitty, obviously, Christian music, has been doing specifically Christian music for decades.
Yep.
In fact, I saw him a couple weeks ago in Chesterfield, Missouri, which was so much fun. There was like 2,000-3,000 people there. You know, got the arms around the sun shirt.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I'm very much in the 80s because I really like his new song.
Yeah.
I love that shirt. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So you have transitioned away from something that's very faith-based into something that's, I don't like the word secular because I don't really believe in the difference between sacred and secular. You know, it's sort of all God's.
Right.
It's God's 12 notes.
Right.
And all that kind of stuff. But you are doing something now that's in a broader arena that's not specifically faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think about that as someone who comes from the world of Christian music, transitioning into a world and into music that's not really faith-based? But I know that you still want to select songs that are injecting hope with people,
Mm-hmm.
positivity.
Mm-hmm.
How are you thinking about that as you are expanding into an arena where it's much, much broader, and how your faith plays a role in that?
That was actually a huge component of my decision to take this leap. I don't want to say I was worried about it, but that was definitely a big issue for me, because on one hand, I felt like, people joke that Smitty and I were like the odd couple. I mean, we've it's almost like a marriage. You're with somebody for 27 years, and he really leaned on me a lot. I became his right-hand man in so many ways. So it felt like Aaron leaving Moses,
Yeah, I can imagine.
we had our pastor and his wife over for dinner fall of 22, when I was still kind of pondering and praying a lot that summer about, am I supposed to do this? Because first and foremost, my faith informs everything I do. And I was wrestling with the question, am I supposed to leave something that makes such a difference in people's lives? I mean, I've seen thousands of letters over 3 decades from people that would say, this song changed my life, or this song saved my life. Gosh, when I was going through this stuff that I went through, there was a song, which one was it? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forget which song it was. Anyway, I can't remember, but whatever it was a song that we did every night. And I found myself like barely able to get through it, because this song was really jerking on my heartstrings. So all that to say, I really wrestled through that. And I remember talking with my pastor and saying, do you think I'm okay to go do something that's not faith-based on the surface? And I already kind of was settled. I knew what the answer was, but I wanted to hear what he said. And funny enough, he threw the same quote at me that I'm always throwing around. It's one of my favorites. I think it was Martin Luther, who said, how does a Christian cobbler, shoemaker, how does he best honor God? Not by putting little crosses on his shoes, but by making the best shoes.
Exactly.
And I always loved that, because I had already had most of the show outlined, while I'm still making this decision. And like you said, I've been, and I will always be very intentional about the songs that we do. But there are so many songs from that decade that they're not faith-based, but man, they have encouraging or uplifting messages.
Exactly.
Or they're probing, they're asking big questions, or they're just playing good songs that make people feel good and bring people joy.
Which is what art is supposed to do in the first place.
And
ask good questions, help us to be curious,
right?
Lead us to seeking something, which is kind of a problem with a lot of, I know I'm casting a broad net here. I see that as kind of a problem with a lot of faith-based music.
Yes, absolutely.
And faith-based art, and I would include faith-based movies, is that they're trying way too hard to give all the answers. And that's not what art is designed to do.
Yes, I can't stand like cookie cutter, easy answer Christianity. That's not realistic. We live in a real world where people are hurting, and there are times it's hard. Like as a really sensitive artistic type myself, like that's hard. It's just hard to get through the day sometimes, just turning on the news. So I was talking about that with my pastor, and he said, Jim, we got enough people preaching to the choir. Go do what you do. You're uniquely gifted to do this and to do music. The world could use all the joy it could get right now.
Absolutely.
So go do something with excellence. You got this whole generation and their kids who are hungry for an experience where, think about it this way. We've got a shot at bringing 10,000 people under one roof from all different stripes, political, socioeconomic, who everybody's got a story. Everybody is hungry to I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that people are so nostalgic for is an era where we just didn't have 24/7 news cycles telling us how bad everything is all the time and how the world's falling apart. And so I view it as a chance to just do something that's going to make 5,000 or 10,000 people have the time of their life for 3 hours. It's going to be done at a top-notch level of excellence. It's going to be done with integrity. Even the business side, I want to do things with integrity, the way we treat people. One of my missions with it is to work with the artists and have them go, what's different about you?
Yep.
You know, you're not one of these cutthroat sharks that's just out to make a buck. I mean, and we've already had some experiences with some of these artists that I won't get into because they're kind of private, but they've kept me going because it's proved the concept to me that if I just live what I believe without banging people over the head with the Bible, but just loving people where they are, being welcoming, and, you know, inevitably it comes out. People figure out what you believe. And I think there's a way to do that where you are just being a person of integrity and
That's right.
doing something with excellence. But the other part of it, you know, when it comes to the songs, I kind of joke about, you know, there's no shortage of mind-blowingly great songs from that decade.
It's an embarrassment and no other decade even compares.
No.
I know my son gets tired of me saying that. You know, we've had a lot of conversations about, you know, I know I'm a Gen Xer, but I objectively, with all the objectivity I can muster, if you take the top 100 songs of the 80s, there's just no comparison.
Yeah.
The 90s was still pretty good.
Yeah.
70s had a lot of great songs. The 60s, you got the Beatles and some others.
Yeah.
But there's just objectively, it's not even a comparison.
Right. Yeah. One of the first things I did when I really started getting serious about this, I went through all the Billboard charts of the entire decade.
Wow.
Not just the top 100 songs of the decade.
That's a lot of work.
But the top songs of every year in that decade. It's mind-blowing. And then the first problem became evident. How on earth do you boil this down into one show? That was the ultimate challenge. And now, you know, my original vision for this was, I want this to be on tour in arenas around the world. And once we get to that point, we can do whatever we want. I want it to be a 3-hour show. I want people to, like Springsteen in his 70s, still does 3-hour shows. And I think you do an intermission. So you basically have a pair of hour and 15-minute sets. Anything short of that, it's really difficult to get below 3 hours. But now that we're talking to venues in Las Vegas to debut as a residency, you can't really do anything over 2 hours there.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I've started to work on chiseling it down, and I'm like, I can't get it under 2:15. I'm like, I can't pull that song out. You can't do an 80s show without that song. But so I don't know what we're going to do because I cannot get it below 2:15 and feel good about it. The other, you know, part of that is I'm intent about crafting an arc. You know, these are all stories. And
I was going to ask you about that, how you make storytelling into the ebb and flow of the emotions of.
Well, it goes back to the way we grew up. You'd buy an album, a vinyl album. Like you were talking about earlier, you'd pull the credits out and you'd sit there and read it while you listen to the whole thing. Amy Grant talked about that in her interview. We were intentional about song order. We were intentional about the space between each song.
Exactly.
Because you knew that people were going to listen to it front to back, and they were going to flip the record in the middle, and you wanted it to have an ebb and a flow and a kind of a story arc. And so that's how I've crafted the show. Every song is intentional about where it's placed, about what it says. The keys that the songs are in. I mean, all of it. And so to just haphazardly rip a song out, it's like, it's painful. So all that to say, I've gotten a lot of input, and I've never asked people, because I know what would happen if I did, you know, give me your ideas for what songs you want to hear. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit, I think, on social posts, but it's hilarious how wide a range. You know, here I am. I've crafted this set list I'm really proud of really excellent songs. and inevitably somebody will say something like, and thankfully this is rare, but I've had people say, "Oh, you should do Super Freak by Rick James." And I just want to hang my head. I'm like, did you even hear the
I
songs?
would never have guessed somebody would want that in a set list.
That's one of the more tame.
Nothing against Rick James.
No, I mean it's a novelty, but it's a novelty song. It's something you would hear at weddings, when everybody's 3 sheets to the wind, But like I'm trying to craft something of excellence here. You've got songs like "Living Years" by Mike and the Mechanics, "Kyrie," "I Want to Know What Love Is." Still haven't found what I'm looking for. "Where the Streets Have No Name," "In Your Eyes," on and on. All these incredible songs with rich lyrics that actually say something.
Yeah.
And to your point, I've been really intentional about what are those songs saying. And it's not that they all have to have some kind of theological message, but they're songs that are well crafted. They have something generally intelligent to say. For that reason, we're not doing "Pour Some Sugar on Me." It's like, it was a fun song, in 1988, but there is such a wealth of incredible music that I believe if we do it right, you're going to have people almost weeping by the end of the night from what they've experienced. It's going to be incredibly emotional because every person in that audience is going to bring their story to the table. So when they hear, especially some of those ballads, it's going to take you right back to 8th grade or whatever. And Jason Scheff, when he came over, this is back when I was still trying to decide, am I doing this? He was lead singer of Chicago for 30 years after Peter Cetera. Mm-hmm. And that was my era, Chicago 18, when Jason took over. And so, "Will You Still Love Me?" And
I love that song.
Yeah. So
Such an amazing song.
He's here. So 15-year-old me is trying to not freak out. But he's become a good friend. And so he's here and we're re-recording "Will You Still Love Me" for Arcade Orchestra.
In the same key?
In the same key. And
so he didn't pull an Elton John.
Nope. And he's nailing it. And not only the same key, but all those incredibly intricate harmony parts that people don't realize. And so yeah, we were talking about that. And oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Just quality of songs. Shoot, I forgot what I was going to say.
Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago. I lost it. Sorry.
It happens to me.
Yeah, but
50, so.
Yeah, I mean, just songs like that, that are just amazing, amazing songs. And there are just so many. I mean, we could do I call it kind of a Cracker Jack show. Every show is going to be different because there'll be a slot in the show. I could pull that song out. We also are planning, we're not going to market this, but we want to have surprise guest artists as much as possible. If Steve Perry happens to be in town, we would love to have Steve Perry come out halfway through "Don't Stop Believing," or
that would be
separate
amazing.
ways. Like maybe we have Kelly Clarkson start the song, and she's no slouch. Yeah. But then halfway through the song, Steve Perry walks out and they tag team and finish. People are going to lose their minds. So all that to say, no, there's not room for the silly, Super Freak or don't, "Pour Some Sugar on Me." Sorry. But this is a show that's going to honor the best of the decade. And there's just a ton of it to honor. Hey, thanks for listening. In case you're wondering, what's Arcade Orchestra? Well, what if you could go back and actually relive the 80s? Not just listen to the music, but actually travel back in time and experience the best of the decade in a fully immersive experience that engages all 5 senses. We are building this experience, and it's called Arcade Orchestra. If you'd like to know more, be sure to follow us on our socials, YouTube channel, and arcadeorchestra.com.
There's some songs, and maybe this is true of every generation, but there's some songs from the 80s where, like "Is This Love?" Is that the title of it? "Is This Love I'm Feeling?" Is that the title of it?
Yes.
But that intro, it has that guitar. I don't know what kind of guitar it is, but there's a lot of like reverb on it, and like it starts and there's something that just takes me immediately back, to I'm in high school.
Yeah.
And music has that power.
Yeah.
And I love that you're building a show that isn't just a random collection of, this isn't like a cover band at a bar,
Right.
just kind of running through a set list, but there's something very emotional about it. You're taking into account the storytelling, the orchestral stuff, which is only going to enhance the emotion.
Right.
It just, I can't wait to come to the first show.
Yeah. I can't wait to do it. Yeah. It's, we've talked about that. Just going back to what I was saying about the intentionality of, from the stage perspective, we all know what song's coming next, but we're going to be watching people's reactions. And I'm thinking, and this goes back years that I've been dreaming of this, people are going to be losing their minds in the middle of the song that we're doing right now. But you have the advantage on stage of knowing, oh, wait till you hear what's next. And that's going to be happening for 3 hours straight. Just watching people get more and more amped up and responding, and then thinking, I'm writing like this, in some cases, like these orchestral interludes between a couple of the songs that are just, you don't know what's coming next, but it's really powerful moment musically. And then all of a sudden the hook of the next song plays, and then you're just going to see people lose their minds. And I just think that's going to be one of the advantages of being on stage. And, that ties into the George Lucas, creator of Star Wars, always talked about the curse. I don't forget exactly how he said it. The creator's curse is you're so close to the magic because you're creating it. You're never going to experience what your audience is going to experience. And that's kind of a bummer. Like, I mean, it's going to be a blast for me. That
makes a lot of sense.
To have created this and dreamed of it for years, to finally see it come to fruition. That's going to be its own reward in a sense, but I'll never have the perspective. And this is any performer. We never get the perspective of what the audience sees. There's an irony in that. When I grew up, practically idolizing Smitty as a teenager and going to his shows, that was the bug that bit me. And so I wanted so badly to experience that. Like, what must that be like to be on stage and to be doing that? So then I was one of the fortunate few who got to role reverse. And then I did get to experience that. And yeah, there's nothing like that thrill of stepping on stage in front of a few thousand people. There were times that this must be what it was like to be in the Beatles. I'll never forget playing, I think we were in Denmark one time, and we were playing in an arena, and it was an unbelievably thunderous noise, that crowd, before we even stepped out. That's fun. But for almost 3 decades, I never again knew what it was like to see it from the audience perspective. And so, that's been part of the process of, okay, how do I build this show? And I spent 3 decades building shows for other artists. So that becomes a skill that you have to hone, that you have to, how do we craft this experience so that the audience gets their bang for their buck? But even, way more important than that, how do I give these people an emotional experience that they're going to remember through the rest of their lives? But there's the sad reality that, man, I wish I could step out of, experience it from both perspectives. The best I'll ever do is I'll see a video of it, but that doesn't compare. I was talking to Mike Lindup in one of our interviews, keyboard player from Level 42. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I'm trying to remember what the question I asked him that led to his answer. I think I was asking him kind of what you asked me about the 80s and what is it that makes that such a powerful draw? Excuse me, I know what it was. I was talking about how the biggest grossing touring acts of the last 5-6 years, they're all 80s artists.
Yeah, which is really, it's strange but compelling. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what's going on there, except, I know like Journey, Toto, Def Leppard. My wife went to see Def Leppard a couple years ago when they were in St. Louis.
Yeah.
It was like 100 degrees that day, and I said, I don't care who's on stage. I'm not going to stand in Busch Stadium in 100-degree heat.
Right.
I don't like the heat.
Yeah, me.
But she was there and rocking and rolling, and it was really interesting just to see her little video clips from it.
Yeah.
you know, when they start in with Pour Some Sugar on Me or Photograph or whatever, people just go nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is insane. You know, this song is like 40 years old or whatever. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. And so Mike gave a great answer. He said, I think one of the things that keeps all that going is that you can't put the live experience in a bottle. You can watch a video all day long, and it can be the most well-produced video you've ever seen. It's still nothing like being in a room with a couple thousand people or a stadium and experiencing the rush of hearing one of your favorite bands play one of your favorite songs that was part of the soundtrack of your youth. That you just can't recreate that.
There will come a time when you can't do that because they're going to be gone.
Exactly.
Or not able to tour, or, you know, that's a limited, it's like, man, when Paul McCartney's out on tour, you better go see him.
Right.
You know, because he's not going to be around forever. No disrespect to Paul McCartney if he sees this.
That's a fact. And that's another reason for this is I'm trying not to be too high-minded about it, but, especially when you're talking to these artists, you don't want to say, well, you know, you could be dead in a couple of years. But
that's true of anybody.
They're in their 70s, a lot of them. And so there's no guarantees. We're starting to lose people. Just the other day, it was announced that the lead singer of a-ha was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm like, there again, you know, as honestly as I can say it, one of my biggest goals with all this is to just honor these artists because they gave me the soundtrack to my life, and honor the artists, honor the music they gave us in the best way possible, that, and let them have a voice in it. You know, that's partly why we're doing the podcast, is to let them tell their stories, you know, and hopefully in a way that is not just, you know, Barbara Walters or whatever, just, you know, trying to craft those interviews in a way where they really feel comfortable and where they can just talk, just tell us your story, give us your perspective, because it is important. I mean, these are monuments to culture and to all of our lives and our collective experiences.
I've got a few rapid fire questions here. Before we do that, though, I'm curious, what is your perspective on something that I've been curious about for a long time? I think you're the first person that I've actually met who could probably answer this with like some firsthand knowledge. So you've talked to a lot of artists. You've known a lot of artists over the years. You're interviewing some great artists for the podcast. My perception has always been that people who, you know, everybody's career goes through an arc of some kind. It doesn't matter who you are. It seems to be that long-term artists have a period of about 8 to 10 or 12 years where they're really, really creative, like Billy Joel, for example. I love his music, but, you know, except for the song he put out, I think it was last year, you know, he hasn't really made any significant new music for a really long time.
Right.
So I love his music and stuff. What is that like being an artist who you had massive hits decades ago? Those are the songs everybody wants to hear, but yet you continue to tour. You may have released new music, which most people don't care about that much.
Right.
You know, I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
Yes, right.
What is that experience like for people who you were like 27 or you were 32 whenever you had this monster thing happen in your career, and now you're in your mid 70s and you're still singing those same songs?
Right.
Obviously, you know, that can be very lucrative, but that can't possibly be very creatively satisfying. Yeah. What does that feel like to be a band like Toto, who you're out there playing songs that you wrote 45 years ago? You know, how do you keep that creative spark going? Yeah. I'm curious what your experience has been knowing so many artists and how maybe they have dealt with that in their life.
Well, I think you can break it up into at least two categories. Artist A is frustrated because they don't like that they're defined by their heyday.
Right.
And they almost shun it. And if they do that material, they do it begrudgingly. Yeah. In fact, I was telling you before we started rolling, there's a major 80s band that I was trying to get for our podcast. And we were told they don't have any interest in talking about the 80s. They don't consider themselves an 80s band. And I'm like, I get that for the reasons you just said, but okay, good luck playing a show and not playing those huge monster hits.
Right. That everybody knows.
Yeah. And they do. This band does play those things. On artist B has wisdom about it. And they know yeah, we wouldn't be here without that era. So then the challenge becomes, okay, well, how do we still play those songs and keep it somewhat interesting for ourselves and not just phone it in?
Yeah.
That's a challenge. I mean, there were songs when I was with Michael that we play. I mean, I played probably 3,000 times over my career, and that can be hard. But Toto, you mentioned, is a great example. They're out killing it every night, and they're legitimately having a blast.
They seem like they're having a lot of fun.
They are.
And I'm like, how do you guys, you've played Rosanna for the millionth time. How can you possibly find creative enjoyment in that? I don't know what the answer is.
I don't know if I know either. I think at least part of it, though, is recognizing that we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't still be selling out big arenas without that material. Yeah. I mean, Africa is one of the biggest playing songs of all time. Yeah. And you really can't mess with it too much because people want to hear it. They expect to hear it.
They don't want a creative reinterpretation.
No. So I think you just decide, and it probably helps that there's 10,000 screaming fans.
I'm sure it does.
Who go nuts. That's no small thing. So I think you either recognize it and you embrace it, or you begrudgingly play it because you have to. And that's, to me, all it comes down to.
Yeah. You know? Same thing with authors, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
You have people who are famous for a particular thing, and then decades go by, and that's what really, that's their bread and butter, but they want to expand creatively. Yeah. Same thing with directors, I'm sure. Yeah. Anybody in a creative field.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good lesson for all of us.
It is. It's a challenge. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't imagine. I mean, I haven't been an artist in that sense, but I get it. I mean, Smitty, when his worship stuff blew up in 2001, for one, it was a really unique cultural moment. The modern worship thing hadn't taken off yet. Yeah. It was just starting to. But 9/11 happened. And all of a sudden, people flocked to that kind of music.
And nobody could have predicted that was going to happen.
We recorded it in June 2001. The record came out on September 11th.
I remember that.
Who could have planned that? 90 days later, it's platinum, which was unheard of for him. And so he went through a phase where it was pretty difficult. We played we did a European tour a couple months into that. And we were playing at this big church in Belfast. The first half of the show, it was all the hits, the 80s stuff. And they were literally just sitting there with their arms folded, looking miserable. And we were like, what is going on? And typical Smitty show, the band left the stage while he played his little, acoustic set by himself. And a guy comes backstage holding his kid, and he's like, have you heard the worship record? And yeah, he goes, well, you better start playing it or they're going to burn your cars. Very Irish. And we said, yeah, it's coming. We're going to do that in the second half. As soon as we started the second half playing that song, it was an entirely different audience. They were on their feet, and it frustrated him for a while because he's like, I
can imagine.
He's like, yeah, and he was a worship leader his whole life, but he's like, that's not all I do. I also have the creative pop side of me. And it took him a while to sort through that. And then he kind of ended up embracing it. And so it's kind of like he's had two different careers.
It is really interesting. So at the show we were at, my brother and I went to see him. This maybe was about a month ago. I thought it was a couple of weeks. Time flies, I guess. And it's really interesting because, it's exactly like you said, the first half is kind of pop stuff, old stuff, new stuff. And I really like the new stuff. And then it's worship stuff. And it's interesting because I don't really know any other artist in Christian music who's doing both of those things and has been able to blend them in a really interesting way.
Yeah. He's got a unique situation and skill set because he can do both.
Maybe Rich Mullins back in the day was able to do some of that.
Yeah. I know Rich is an icon. I just didn't ever really listen to his stuff, so I couldn't tell you. But Michael's had it good as an artist because he's got his foot in several different worlds.
Which is probably really smart business-wise.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've got some rapid fire questions here as we kind of wrap this up. Thanks for allowing me to invade your studio today and see all the cool stuff. So it's fun to kind of see this because I see the videos and stuff and it's like, wow, there's a lot of keyboards in here.
Yes. Yeah. People only ever see this angle, but there's the other side of the room.
And probably lots of others I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are probably not going to be any surprise, but these are just some fun questions. If you could collaborate with any artist from the 80s, who would it be?
Phil Collins.
I kind of figured you'd say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Phil.
Yeah. He's uniquely standalone to me as a writer, drummer. I mean, my gosh, I love the guy personally. I've always had a heart for him. I think there's just something about, he just seems like an everyman. I've seen countless interviews with him, private stories where people like, he's helped people. I mean, just a really, really great guy. I hope before he leaves us, it's my biggest dream to sit down and get 10 minutes with him. So hopefully that happens. We'll see.
I hope so too. I would love to see that conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't reveal this. What is an 80s song that people might be surprised that you would cover in the Arcade Orchestra show? Or maybe in some other, I assume the show will probably morph and change over time.
Yeah, it will. To some degree. I mean, there's basically a skeleton that's never going to change, skeleton outline, because like we were talking about, there has to be a framework. There's a few spots where this song is always up for rotation or that song. But as far as what people might be surprised by, I can't think of any, because I think all of them are going to be songs that you would hope to hear or expect to hear. If anything, they might be surprised by a few of the instrumental moments.
Interesting.
When we do this in Las Vegas with the residency, we can't do an intermission for a lot of reasons. So it's going to have to be just one big show, which really bums me out, because I had crafted basically two shows within one where there's a break.
Okay.
And so I had an idea to start the second half in a really cool way, and I'll still do it, I think, but I'll just say this: TV and movie themes were a big deal in the 80s. And I think there are several that you can have a lot of fun with.
Oh my gosh.
From a visual standpoint. So I think that's going to be a fun surprise for people. In fact, too, the show starts at the very beginning, and then in the middle, where once we get out and play arenas, it'll start the second half. And even that slot has 2 or 3 different possibilities. So I think that'll probably be a fun surprise.
Please tell me you're going to work in Sanford and Son in there somewhere. I don't know if that's...
Well, Sanford Son's really late 70s.
I don't know. Yeah, so, that's true.
Yeah.
It's so iconic.
No, I mean, 80s, think about it. 80s was all about, action, like Miami Vice, A-Team, all those Mike Post songs. Yep. So it's going to be more in that direction. Star Wars, I mean, my gosh. Back to the Future theme. You got that, I can tell you. I mean, I'm weaving that in there in a really fun way. And honoring that film score. I mean, it's Arcade Orchestra. It's not an orchestra show, but it happens to have these big orchestral elements. So, got to take advantage of that.
Okay, final rapid fire question here is, who do you feel like is the most underrated 80s artist?
Underrated? I don't know if there is such a thing, because the whole nature of 80s music is it's so highly rated.
Or artists that you really love their music, 80s artists, but they've never really gotten the press or the notoriety or the recognition that they deserve.
And I'd have to really think about that, because all the people that I adore, all the artists and music, it's all the big stuff, And it's a long list. Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, Genesis, Tears for Fears, Simple Minds, Duran Duran, Aha, Van Halen. So I don't know how to answer that one, because I think everything that I love is the stuff that everybody else loves too. Yeah. There's probably, I would even maybe say in reverse, there's probably some that I would scratch my head at a little bit. My head. I can't talk today. People that I'm like, I don't get that. Like, the Rick James thing. Like, all right, it was a goofy, fun novelty song. But so that would be the way I would answer it. I've had people make suggestions. What about this song? And I'm like, seriously? Like, that's so down here. Like, nobody even knows what that song is. But that's kind of a testament to that decade. Like we were saying earlier, there's so much stuff. And yeah, if you go beyond all the number ones, there's 9 other songs on every artist's record that a lot of people don't necessarily know.
That's right.
But there's a lot of goofy ones too, and a lot of stuff that I was just like, no, and I hope I don't alienate anybody here, but like Debbie Gibson, and some like the 80s mall music, type stuff. I'm just more about those ones I just rattled off, the bigger, and a lot of them tend to be British.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the stuff that came out of England, but so yeah, for me, it would almost be that question in reverse. Like there's some that I don't quite get why they were as big as they were. But again, the 80s was such a broad decade in terms of, there's almost all these different genres within it. I mean, you had the slick pop stuff like Mr. Mister, and at the same time you had U2, which was very organic and raw, and it kind of had the punk thing from the late 70s. And then you had the very beginning of even hip hop back then, which was not my thing, but there's just so many different styles. And then you had hair metal, hair rock, Def Leppard and Poison and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a startling decade.
Then you have artists like Prince, who,
oh my gosh,
they're kind of out there doing their own thing. Obviously, tons of great hits.
Yeah.
Of all the 80s artists, if you could go and you had access to their secret archives, do you think Prince is probably the one that has the most unreleased music?
He might be.
Like the vault. You hear stories about, I don't even know how many unreleased songs.
Yeah.
Finished, unfinished.
It's a lot. And because he was such a hyper creative person, I would love to sit and just flip through his demos, because I'm sure there's some stuff in there that would be mind blowing.
I'm surprised they haven't released more of his stuff since he died.
Well, there was he was very adamant about controlling, his stuff, rightly so. I totally get that. But yeah, it's a shame that we don't know more, because he's one. It's funny you bring up Prince, like trying to craft this set list for our show. There was a long time where there were no Prince songs in it.
Really?
And I was at a pool party with one of our besties, and we were talking about Prince, and we start rattling off songs like 1999 and Little Red Corvette and Delirious and Kiss. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go back and redo the set list. How can you do it?
It has to be so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. And that's going to be something I'm going to have to brace myself for. There's going to be people who are going to go, how could you do this show and not have any songs by this artist? At the moment, there's no Madonna songs in the set list. There's no Whitney.
There's too much good stuff.
I mean, it's like you only have 2 hours to play with. And so you're trying to find a broad swath of stuff that's going to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
You want people singing along. So it's hard. It's really hard. There's a lot of artists who are not in the show by default. Now I'm constantly tweaking it. I'm sure I'll find a way. Gosh, Madonna had tons.
She had a lot of stuff
in the 80s. And so I got to find a way. There's a couple songs of hers that I'd love to have in there, but it's hard.
I haven't followed her stuff for a really long time, but I really respect the fact that she's still out there making music, touring, doing her thing. Like I respect people who have their thing and they just keep going at it.
Yeah.
Almost like regardless of commercial success or not.
Yeah.
Because there's an arc to every pop artist's career.
Sure.
You're not going to be, maybe Bruce Springsteen's not really on the radio, but I love the fact that he's still putting out stuff.
Yeah.
And it's good stuff. Or like the Rolling Stones, their newest album was actually legit, really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm like, and that was like a 60s band starting out. So
and it's like we always say, what kind of music are we going to leave for Keith Richards? What's he going to be listening to when we're all dead and gone?
Yeah. He's going to survive till 200. So, well, Jim, thanks. This has been an absolute blast.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. One final question. I'll wrap this up. What is the deal? I feel like Jerry Seinfeld here. So, because you're the only person that I personally know now who could really answer this, what is the deal with the Lynn drum machine in the 80s?
Oh,
Like
yeah,
it's on so much stuff, particularly the early 80s.
Yeah.
You know, Phil Collins, Prince, it seems like everybody was using
Everybody
it.
used it.
Is it just an example of a technology that was introduced and for whatever reason it just caught fire and then everybody used it and then it became so ubiquitous at some point then everybody stopped using it?
Yeah.
I guess. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. For one, the 80s was the beginning of a whole new technology. Why can't I talk today? Technology boom.
Yeah.
And it was very primitive in a lot of ways. If you listen, if you go back through the decade, up until around 1984, there was a lot of still kind of holdover from the 70s. Things were still, like if you listen to Amy and Michael's records, the first couple records still had more 70s sound than 80s.
That easy listening James Taylor kind of a deal.
Yeah. Drum machines started coming around, technically late 70s, but early 80s. But the Lynn drum was just one of the first that was, it was kind of like the Yamaha DX7. It was just a big, new, shiny toy that everybody had to have it. And there were just very few things like that. And so when they started coming out, same as the DX7, everybody started using them. You heard it on everything. And there were only a few options. It was the Lynn drum, then there was one by Emu called the SP12. There was Akai, started coming out with theirs, the sample-based things. But it just was a time when, like we were talking about Keyboard Magazine, I lived for that magazine. Every month it would come out, and I would just scan every page into my brain, basically. And it was, now there's this new keyboard out, and it was just an exciting time.
That's what drives so much of any artistic, movies, music, publishing.
Yeah. But the Lynn drum in particular, what was interesting about that is guys like Prince, they would do the unexpected with it. If you listen to the sounds as they were stock, the kick drum kind of sounded like a kick drum. The snare kind of sounded like a snare. I mean, the sampling rate was really primitive, so it sounded grainy and all that. But then you had guys that would, typical artist fashion, they would push it to its limits and do things it wasn't intended to do. Yeah. So that sound that Prince used a lot, it was the rim shot sample. Uh-huh. He tuned it way down. And so it had this, I can't imitate it, but it had this really grainy, down-pitched vibe that the second you heard that, it's like, oh, that's a Prince sound.
Is that on the beginning of When Doves Cry? Is that one of the components of that?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'd have to go back and listen to it. For whatever reason, it's not in my head at the moment. But you heard it in everything that he did. And then other people would. I think what other sounds people abused in that thing. Well, like Tonight by Genesis. Yep. Those were the tom samples that were just tuned up and down, and then they used everything through this AMS reverb box, the non-linear, the gated reverb that Genesis and Phil Collins used all the time. I actually did a video about that, recreating those sounds with the Lynn drum, and so it was just one of those boxes that became ubiquitous. Like you said, everybody used it. Some people used it the way it was intended to be used, but then Prince came along and did his thing with it, and then the hip hop guys took to it later on, and it was just one of those.
And now it's cool again.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Like everything else, vintage. The used market for that stuff is just,
I can't imagine,
astronomical. Yeah. You could probably get. I've seen some Lynn drums listed for $10,000, which is just silly because Behringer, came out with their clone of it this past year for, I think it's $300, and it's spot on. It's
literally the exact same sounds.
Exact same sounds. But people just have it in their head. Oh, there's just something. There's just an extra bit of vibe. No, you're just inspired by the fact that it's a cool vintage piece of gear.
Yeah,
which I totally get. I mean, most of these are all vintage. And I can get all these sounds in the computer, but it's way more fun to play the stuff that inspired you as a kid. And there's a mystique about it and a magic. And so there's lots of reasons to use that old stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go pay $10,000 for a drum machine.
My son loves vinyl. And I'm like,
Vinyl
there's
over-
a part of me, I'm like, you can stream all this stuff on Spotify.
Yeah.
I already pay for this on,
Right.
but it's the same music, but it's not the same.
It's a tangible experience.
Yeah.
And vinyl overtook CDs last year for the first time.
It just blows my mind.
Yeah, because it's an experience. And I think kids today are hungry for that authentic
That's right.
analog experience, where you're touching something and you're getting all the imperfections, the crackling and the noise. We spent everything we had getting away from that,
Now it's back.
and with the clarity of digital, and that was the big thing. And now there's plugins for your computer to give you all that junk back. So it's funny,
It is really
we go
funny.
through these cycles, but anyway.
Well, this has been fun.
It has been fun.
Yeah, thanks for indulging all my inane questions.
Yeah, no, it's
about
all
all things 80s.
Yep.
My wife gets a little tired of me talking about 80s stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think people probably think there's something wrong with me, but it's like, hey, that's what you like, you embrace it, and in this case, hopefully we find a way to make a dent in the universe, as Steve Jobs said, and do something cool that brings people joy. And how can you not? I mean, if you do it right, I think there's a way where people go, man, I want to. It's the closest thing to getting your own DeLorean and going back. That's
right.
We really want people to, from the time they walk in the doors, again, going back to the 80s mall idea, we want you to experience it with all five senses. We want you to smell an Auntie Anne's pretzel, get an Orange Julius, sit down at an authentic Pizza Hut with the red checkered tablecloth, the Ms. Pac-Man table, get all those 80s candies, and then you smell Polo and Drakkar, and
That's right. I had both those.
you get your members only jacket and pick up a Walkman, maybe a vinyl of your favorite artists. I mean, yeah, we want you to feel like you've gone back in time 40 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's fun. I mean, I just think there's a magic about that people are gonna want to flock to it.
You can have a DeLorean for people to sit in. With a time machine.
Funny enough,
that would be fun.
Yeah, I had an idea to start the show that involved actually, well, I don't want to say it in case we can pull it off, but I thought before we even go down that road, I need to get clearance from the Back to the Future folks, because it's not a Back to the Future show, but I ended up talking to the guy who wrote Back to the Future, Bob Gale, and he turned us down. He said, well, for reasons I can't tell you, there's some other things coming to that city, and he said, we don't want people to get confused. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a Back to the Future show, but we would love to have a DeLorean involved.
I'm sure he's very protective of it.
He is, rightfully so, and I get it. So
one of the biggest IPs of all time.
Yes, and the good news is it probably saved us $2 million, because if we did this DeLorean idea, it would cost a lot. But there's other things we can do. But yeah, I mean, it's not to say we can't have one sitting out front and photo booth kind of thing where you get to sit in a DeLorean and take a picture. I think that'd be a blast. So we'll see.
Wow. Well, best of luck.
Yes.
I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the first show.
Me too.
Hey, thanks so much for checking out another episode of The Profitable Writer. And of course, many thanks to the incredible Jim Daneker for making time to be a guest on today's episode. Again, to find out more about Jim and Arcade Orchestra, visit jimdaneker.com and arcadeorchestra.com.